I'm just going to come into, you guys can be as close as feels comfortable. So we were working on Repulse Monkey today, which is kind of the classic retreat move in Tàijíquán, right? That's the classic move. Rather like, Penglu Jian is the practice, the common etude or the familiar refrain in Tàijíquán, or single whip might be the most well-known posture, right? But if you say we want to do a lateral move, everybody says, well, wave hands like clouds. That's the big move Tàijíquán's known for. I want to do a rear going move. Oh, you must be doing Repulse Monkey. There's more to it than that, of course, but that's the one that people are aware of. Now, when we think of martial arts, we think, well, it makes sense. Any martial art's going to have a retreat move. That makes sense. But I also bet it's not one of their main things. And they're not going to have a billion ways to retreat. They're going to have a whole bunch of ways to throw you, to attack you, to fake you out, to get out of things, to break your finger, whatever the art does. And they have a couple ways to retreat. 2 moves, 1 move, 3 moves, a theory or so, and that's kind of it. It's not the emphasis. Nobody says, this is my son Charlie. I'd love to have him learn to retreat, so I've signed him up for your karate program. That's not what happens, right? So the teachers aren't excited about the retreat. The students certainly aren't there to learn how to retreat. But retreat is a necessary component. You have to know how to retreat. And I could certainly retreat kind of going back at an angle. I can retreat a number of different ways. I can retreat as I have energy going forward. I can move energy to the side as I go back, and all kinds of hybrids of these things. But the thing that I'd like to point out that makes Tàijíquán quite different than most martial arts is that it doesn't merely have a move or two or a few ways to retreat like any martial art does, but it has as a primary principle, a fundamental part of its foundation is the idea of retreating, right? But it isn't just retreat like I give up, I'm afraid, surrender, although that's a necessary part of some martial arts. Like that can happen too. I need to know how to safely bring this to a halt because I'm not going to win, right? Or get out of here so it isn't a fight if I'm not in it, right? But when we have energies of withdraw or shift back, step back, what we have is we have an energy of receive and accept, which is where we get to this fundamental principle of Tàijíquán. It's about receiving and accepting. It's not saying, well, I'm going to be picky and okay, that I'll have. Or we don't take anything. I'm here to give stuff. I learned martial arts, right? Which is part of martial arts. That's some of it too. But the fundamental, like heart softening or ego depowering is accept, receive, which really just means yes. They're doing, sure, fine. I was thinking, oh, no, sure, I guess, oh, a punch, interesting. Not, oh my God, or no, 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 or oh no, oh no, oh no. Oh, cool, yes. Hey, we have moves for that. Oh, we have moves for that. Oh, we have moves for that, right? And I'm trying to stay in camera, but there's a whole bunch of moves. I'm just simplifying. Now, of course, Repulse Monkey stands as a very obvious retreating movement. But throughout the form, we have shift back, generally followed by shift forward, so that we have this balance. But also, so I can reset my shift back. You could learn a sequence and say, this is great. You keep going back to sort of rechamber the rounds, to right, recompress the spring. So, because of course I'm in martial arts. I love the when we go forward part. And I'd love to do that. But I understand, Sifu, that we need to come back in order to do this, come back. Nobody's interested in the back. This is the cool move. That's the cool move. That's the cool move. But we could reverse it and say, I'm going forward so that I can meet you early and lead you back, accept you sooner, be ready to receive. And to really be ready to receive is not simply a tactic, but it's a shift in the heart. It's a shift in the psychology. It's a shift in the ego's importance inside you. Maybe it's a shift in the spirit, right? We practice it with the body, but if we're only practicing it with the body and we're just thinking, well, here's the move where we go backwards, we miss the chance to have it shift our insides and say, this is fundamentally important to Tai Chi to receive. Now, when I receive, I am inviting you to overshoot, overextend, overreach, whatever it is you're doing. So if this is the punch, for example, that the person's doing, and they get invited to overdo it, one thing that happens is that the time that this can come into the arena is longer than if I had just blocked it. And then, of course, not surprisingly, they throw the other thing. You block this and they try another, of course. But if I extend this, I also extend the time between contact and when the other weapons come in, right? Also, if I extend it, I invite it to spend more of its power on something that's not working, right? And I make it take longer for them to put this back into the battle, right? Like if you watch people swing long swords in movies, they do these big, long things, which is not how it would be used. That takes an awful lot of energy. And a lot of that time, it's not pointing at you at all. There's a couple dangerous moments, right? But the way to use it is here, more or less between us all the time, right? But I understand the movie that looks a lot more dramatic, right? It's visually compelling. So in Tàijíquán, I want to be receiving, to draw you out, to accept what you're doing for me and against you, right? It's good for me and it's not good for your attacks, right? But also if I draw you out, the further I draw you out, the more likely I am to draw you out of your root, your connection to the earth, your base of power, your connection to power, and your balance. So as I draw somebody out, I tend to take the time that they need to launch other attacks or repeat the same kind of attack. I tend to challenge their alignment, their posture, right? And then I tend, depending on how far we can go, tend to disconnect them from their stance. Whether here just a bit with my heel, and certainly, or all the way throwing them, that would work too, right? So when we're practicing moves that are inviting, I don't want to have this sense of no, stop, and sideways. I want to have a general sense, because I'm not teaching a specific move here, of into me. But I've retreated, so I'm a little further away than you thought, so your power is not optimal. It'll take a little longer for you to get here because I'm a little further away because I've shifted or stepped in, shifted, right? And as I draw it in, I've bought a little bit of time and space, and I'm inviting it to me, and I've built a stance that I can turn on, right? I don't simply go back and say, Steve said, say yes. Like, you shouldn't say yes here. This is a good uh-oh for sure, right? I want to be able to, I'm in a stance, whatever the stance is for the move we're doing. I'm in a stance. I'm saying yes, right? And I'm rotating. So that energy that's coming to me ultimately misses me or rolls off me or doesn't just drive at me this way because I'm in a place that I can rotate, right? So
Right.
the philosophical concept of yes, please, and thank you, and I don't mind at all. That looks like a delicious punch. I'm going to just take it over. To have that attitude when you're practicing is something like wave hands, repulse monkey can really help you do because you get to do it over and over. Maybe, a bunch of times in your form, or maybe just You could ad nauseum it in a yard like this, just until you start to feel like you have it, right? So over and over, we have these practices. Receive, receive, right? The first thing, receive. We have this over and over in the form, right? So it helps us locate our center. It helps us move our center further from them and rotate our center on a good structure. If I forget that what I'm really doing is saying a primary fundamental feature of Tàijíquán is to, right at the forefront, say, my job is to receive, to go back, to accept, to retreat, right? It isn't like a lot of martial arts where I'm basically trying not to get hurt and looking for a way in to do the stuff I do, even though we have that too, but to have this sense of retreat. And sometimes it's just shifting. Sometimes it's just the arms. Sometimes it's a step or it's a combination, right? You know, we certainly have stepping forward movements, but we have movements where we step forward and retreat, right? So it gets complex. But this, I would argue, makes Tàijíquán different than every other martial art. Maybe there's somebody else that really highly prioritizes that, right? That I'm not thinking of now or not aware of. But certainly Tàijíquán is one of the very few that makes that a fundamental philosophical value of the practice. So something to think about when you're practicing this week. Every time you shift back, see if that makes some sense, okay?
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. Goodbye to everybody.